I've been shooting competitions on a regular basis for over 3 years now, and today I'd like to share with you the top things that I've learned over all my time, effort, and money spent in this sport that I've come to love so much. First, a little background. I got into shooting originally because I just wanted to be a competent concealed carrier and protect myself, and now, of course, a growing family. In 2021, I discovered practical shooting through YouTube videos, and I signed up for my first IDPA match. I did poorly compared to the competition, but I was so shocked at seeing what was an achievable level of skill with a handgun that I was immediately hooked at participating in this and getting truly better. Since then, my involvement in practical shooting has dramatically grown. I'm a master in IDPA, the current Arkansas State Carry Optics champion in USPSA, an official range officer for USPSA, and I have served as a match director for my local club to start hosting PCSL matches as an experiment. Now that you better understand where I've come from, let's talk about what I've learned in these 3 years of shooting matches and how it serves me as a regular dude who does not carry a gun for work. The first lesson I've got for you is that shooting matches is the single best way to test your performance on demand. Why are matches the best test of performance on demand? Well, I've got 3 reasons for you that I feel like pretty much sum it up. 1, you didn't set any of these stages up yourself. You are kind of walking in blind to a match that you're probably just registering to, and you're showing up, and all of these stages have been built for you. You didn't set them up. You don't know, what the targets are. You may walk the stages the morning of the match before you, actually shoot each one, but regardless, these are foreign to you, at least to some degree. 2 is the relatively level playing field that the rule sets provide. Now, each sport has their own little quirks. Some of them are getting better. Some of them are still, doing their thing. But the whole point of these rule sets in these sports is to create the most level playing field possible so that we can see who truly performs the best with their guns, right? And then the third point here is the social pressure. I think social pressure at matches, especially matches that you care about winning, are one of the best ways to just apply the correct type of pressure that's going to really get you to see what you're capable of with your gun. My second point is a little controversial, but it is live fire practice is not as important as most people think. And the reason I say this is because you can get so much done in dry fire with a proper routine if you know what to do. There are very little things that you absolutely need a gun range and ammo to get better with your gun at. And those things are typically enhancing your grip, confirming your visual discipline, especially over longer strings of fire, and then also just developing the ability to call shots and understand where your shots are going without actually having to stare at the target for longer than you are shooting it for, just to see where the holes are being created, right? So these are important skills, and you do need ammo for that. But I will say there are shooters who are infinitely better than me who have shot a fraction of the rounds that I have. I think one of the best examples is currently Joey Sauerland. He is the current national champion in the limited division, and I think he started winning his first area matches when he had like 9,000 rounds under his belt over his entire life. So if somebody can start to win every single area match with only 9,000 rounds shot, and there's people that are shooting 20,000 rounds a year who are still stuck in A or B class, that goes to show dry fire matters a lot more than one would think. The third thing I learned is that the skills that increase your performance the most are different from the skills that look the coolest. When I say skills that look the coolest, I'm really referring to a lot of the drills and little short clips that we'll see on Instagram of people doing, for example, a build drill, right? They're, drawing their gun on a target that's at 7 yards and ripping a bunch of like splits that are in the 12s or 13s. And that's awesome. There's nothing wrong with that. To really communicate this point, let's do some quick math. And we'll use 2 skills as an example. One is splits, which will look super cool on Instagram and stuff. And then let's talk about transitions too, as a slightly more mundane, but frankly, transitions look cool too, at least in my opinion. A 10 target stage where you shoot each target twice will have 10 opportunities to cut splits down, and then 9 transitions where you have opportunities to work on those. Now, if you're an average shooter, your splits might be around 0.3 for, medium distance targets, and then your transitions might be somewhere around 0.6, okay? If you were to spend your time working on transitions, and this can be done primarily in dry fire, you can get those transitions down from 0.6 to around 0.3. That's very achievable. Conversely, if you were to spend a lot of time focusing on getting your splits down, you'd probably cut those splits from like 0.3 to more like 0.2. Now, if we do the math on the savings here, 0.3 times the 9 transitions in this example stage would net you a savings of 2.7 seconds. That's a pretty big deal. If you were to only have worked on your splits, you would have spent more ammo, which is money, and you would have done a savings of 0.1 times 10, which only saves you 1 second. To cap this off, I am not in any way saying don't work on improving your splits, don't work on improving your draw because it only happens once in a stage. Absolutely not. All I wanted to make clear is that there are certain skills that provide much more room for improving your performance, such as your movement throughout a stage and just the athleticism, and of course, bigger actions like transitions compared to other things like shaving your draw from a 1.5 to a 1.3, or getting those splits down another 0.05 of a second. These do add up over time. You should absolutely work on all of the skills with shooting, but just note that there are some skills where you will get absolutely more bang for your buck by working on those when you're trying to get better at practical shooting. The fourth thing I learned is that slow is just slow and smooth is just smooth. And this is a spin on the very popular piece of advice that you'll hear from a lot of mediocre shooters, that slow is smooth and smooth is fast. And it just comes off as mental gymnastics when you actually put it to the sniff test. And the problem with it is, if you see a shooter who's trying to get better and they're a little erratic and jumpy in their movements, it might make sense to tell them to slow down in an attempt to get them to be smoother. But what actually ends up happening is that shooter, if they take the advice, will just under-try and do less of what they're capable of. And if they do that in training and they just think slow is smooth, smooth is fast, they're always going to be performing at a level of performance that is less than what they're actually able to do. So what I advocate for is, if you want to get faster, simply push speed within the bounds of your safety and outside your comfort zone. And as you do this over time in your training, you will genuinely get faster at a much faster pace than thinking to yourself, okay, I'm gonna do a bunch of very slow controlled reps in an attempt to make my efficiency somehow make me more fast. That may make you better than being, jumpy and erratic in the short term, but for long-term serious gains in speed, you need to push speed. Okay, the next couple points are going to be a little bit psychological, but hang in with me here because I do believe mental management is an incredibly important part of the sport, especially as you get to the higher levels of it. The fifth thing I learned is that every loss is a crossroads and that every win can be a trap. And what I mean by that is that when you lose at a match, and you're going to lose a lot, especially when you start out, is that you will find yourself at a sort of a mental crossroad where you can either kind of accept failure and then, turn it into a bunch of negative self-talk where you're like, oh, well, I just got beat so hard by these people and I can't even understand like how they could be 6 seconds faster than me on this stage and woe is me, and you have to shut that stuff off. And instead take the path of, wow, there's so much more for me to learn here. I've got a lot of work to do, and turning that into something that can keep that fire under your rear end to get better and improve your skills. So that's what I mean by the crossroads. And when I say every win can be a trap, what I really mean by that is if you, set a goal to, for example, win your section match, your state championship, and then you finally achieve that goal, it can kind of become an opportunity to allow yourself to slack off on further development. Now, this is okay if you've been investing, for example, a ton of, money into ammo, time away from your family and all that. There's a time and a place for off seasons. But one thing that I've seen in my experience is each time I achieved a milestone, there was a bit of, that little devil on my shoulder trying to be like, oh, you're good enough now. You don't have to train as much. You got to fight that if you want to continue ascending to the next level. So be aware of that, especially if you're doing this for the sake of the sport and to genuinely get as good as you possibly can. Now, the sixth lesson I've learned is that your ultimate goal as a shooter is to increase your subconscious level of performance. That was a mouthful. What do I actually mean by that? When I explain the idea of subconscious performance, one of the best analogies I can come up with is driving. If you've ever been driving around a city that you know and you feel like you've teleported, halfway across the city and you're like, how did I get through all these red lights? Or hopefully not red lights, but how did I get through all these street lights? Were they even green? That's what I mean by subconscious performance. It doesn't take much conscious thought for most of us to drive if we've been doing it for a couple of years. And that is what we want to do as shooters. And the reason we especially want to do this as both either competitive or tactical shooters, if you carry a gun for work, is so that the shooting is not something you have to think about and your brain is free to think about things that are pertinent to the problem you're trying to solve, whether it's a stage in a match or a real life situation that requires discrimination between targets and priority of life, right? So subconscious performance is what we are after. And the way we do that is by isolating individual skills and thinking about them consciously, improving them, and then putting those back into our toolbox in a shinier, more improved manner. And then all of a sudden, the metaphorical pie, as we improve each individual slice, will start to get prettier and prettier, and you will perform better. Building off of this, the 7th lesson I learned is that your performance under pressure will be determined by the quality of your mental management. What I mean by this is that you will have your subconscious performance is here, okay? This is everything that you're capable of. Now, the way your self-talk and your mental management, especially in a sports setting, influences this is if you have a self-image or self-talk or stress that you really don't need influencing you as you step up to the line, you're probably not going to be able to perform at 100% of what you're actually subconsciously capable of. So it's very important to develop some sort of routine. It doesn't need to be very woo-woo. We don't need to talk too much about, manifestation or anything like that. If you're into that, that's awesome, but develop something that works for you, that allows you to maintain, if not a positive, at least a neutral self-image, and stop thinking of yourself as less than you actually are. And this will enable you to unlock and use 100% of what you're actually capable of at a technical level. If you watched the last video we just put out, you already know this one. The 8th and final thing I learned over these last 3 years of competitive shooting is that shooting matches is a fantastic way to network. It is imperative to kind of build a tribe of good men that you connect with on a deep level and share core values with. And I've found that being in the practical shooting scene is a fantastic way to meet people like that. We covered this in the last video. I'm reiterating it because I do think this is such an important point. So shoot matches, meet people, and you will see that all of the lessons that we've covered here will probably also resonate with you even more. If you've made it this far in the video, I appreciate your time. Let me know in the comments if you've been shooting matches, other things that you've learned and would like to share with everyone else. Thank you for watching, and I hope this video made you a better marksman.